Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Won Let's Eat, the Jewish Food Podcast. And I should say it's the We Won Let's Eat Jewish Food Podcast feed. It's been a while since the show has popped up in your podcast player of choice. I guess this is a fun surprise for those of you who have been missing us over the last couple of years since we had stopped recording it. But, we had been reached out to by the person I'm about to introduce with an idea to sort of take over and rebrand and take the Jewish food podcast genre in a totally different direction than we had been doing it previously with myself and my co-hosts, Matt Erickson and Bradley Machov. So I am very excited to introduce Micah Siva, who is a food writer and blogger and recipe writer and content creator in the Bay Area, presently in the Bay Area, but has spent a lot of time all over. And she will talk to us more about that in this and future episodes, I'm sure. And she is going to be the new host of Not Your Bubbe's Nosh, the rebranded Jewish food podcast here on the Jewfolk Podcast Network. Micah, welcome. And how are you?
Thanks, Lonny. I've never been better. I'm talking with you. I'm talking to myself in a room that's dark. There's nothing like doing a podcast in a random closet or space in your home. So happy to be here and happy to see this through as Not Your Bubbe's Nosh, all about Jewish food.
And we're really excited that you reached out to us to sort of kickstart this new opportunity. We're really happy of not just that you reached out, but how quickly we've come together to start putting new episodes together and what this concept looks like. And we're thrilled. And people should absolutely check out your work, and you can plug your work all you want. Your website's great. The food looks delicious. The recipes look really fun. So I'm really excited to hear the direction that you want to take this endeavor as you sort of grow into the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, so I can share a little bit about myself so that I'm not a mysterious enigma on one side of a microphone. So my name's Micah. I live in San Francisco currently. I'm originally from Western Canada, but as Lonny mentioned, I've lived all over from the UK to different parts of the US, all over Canada. And I am a trained chef. I went to culinary school in New York, and then I became a dietitian. So I don't always keep my dietitian hat on. I'm still fun. I'm not like only eat vegetables kind of gal, but I definitely will put a little bit of that knowledge into the podcast as we go forward. Now I work as a recipe developer, a food writer, food photographer, and really just lover of all things Jewish food. That's my special space on the internet, where I'm most passionate about the things that I make when it comes to Jewish food as well. So I write for Jewish newspapers. I work with Aish. I work with Tablet Magazine, and also non-Jewish entities like Simply Recipes, and with other food and beverage brands creating their recipes and content. So every single day I'm thinking about food. Every second I'm thinking about food. Dinner is already in the oven, and it is 9 a.m. And it's an obsession, but at least dinner's always made. And I also just wrote a children's book, 1, 2, 3 Nosh with Me, which is a counting book all about Jewish foods for kids 0 up to 4 years old, as well. So, and now I'm a podcast host. I do it all. Lonny.
Multi-hyphenate, I think, is the sort of new word for that sort of thing. You do a little bit of everything.
And exhausted.
Multi-hyphenate sounds better than jack of all trades.
Yes. Exhausted and multi-hyphenate is pretty much how I would describe myself. But relentless is the other part. And I think that's a good segue into how We Won Let's Eat came to be, because we're doing all these things in this day and age. We all have a million things going on. And at the end of the day, we all come together and eat. And that's what I love about what I do. And that's something that the Jewish people have in common as well, where food is the reward for every single thing we do in life.
And I was going to say that's so much of the Jewish tradition is built around food. It's every holiday is, it's the exception of Yom Kippur, but it ends in breakfast where we all come together around food anyway. But there are so many Jewish holidays that come together over food and drink. that it really is, it is such a central part of our lives as Jews. And you don't have to be a religious person by any means to enjoy that. It's, so much of the sort of cultural Judaism, if you will, also centers around the food and the meal, whether, it's just, you light the Hanukkah candles and have a big plate of latkes, or you spend all day at shul for Rosh Hashanah and then, go home and prepare a big meal for family and friends. No matter how you observe, it's around it.
Absolutely. And on that note, Lonny, I'd like to play a game of who wins. I'm a very competitive person, so I would like for us each to share our favorite Jewish food, make a case for it, and see whose Jewish food reigns supreme. This is Iron Chef of Bubbe's Kitchen.
I am both excited and terrified of what's about to happen here.
I get aggressive.
This is fantastic. Look, I'm here for that. That's great. Okay, so... boy, there are so many. I mean, this is sort of the problem. I think my fallback one that I'm going to go to ultimately is, I think it's going to be the Blitz souffle that I make for Breakfast.
Okay, wild card.
We host Breakfast. We have what is, we have taken to calling the transplant Breakfast. We have been in Minnesota for 20 years now. And having... we have family here, but it was not always, it didn't always work for us to go with them for Breakfast. So we decided we wanted to have our Breakfast sort of our own way and start our own traditions. And so we started hosting this Breakfast, and all of the people we invited were the friends that we either knew from before we moved here that also ended up here, or friends who we made along the way who had recently moved here and would have friends say, hey, so-and-so just moved here. Do you have a place for them for the holidays? Sure. So that was sort of how the Breakfast, the transplant Breakfast was born. And the one thing that, as my wife and I put together our menu, the one thing that I have to have on it is this Blitz souffle recipe. And tried different ones over the years. I have settled on one that is from the Jewish Cooking Boot Camp cookbook, which was written by the friend of my sister-in-law. And it's phenomenal. It's, eggs and sour cream and vanilla mixed together. I don't make my own blintzes because there's only so much I'm willing to do while I'm not eating. I think trying to put together like a whole blintz recipe while also not eating is a little much, but goes in the pan, the blintzes go in frozen on top of it, and it cooks so perfectly. It gets a little brown on top. It's phenomenal. That is my must-have Breakfast meal.
Is it served with a sauce?
I am a sour cream fan.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fruit sauce person.
Interesting.
So that is. I think that's where I'd have to go. But honestly, you could ask me in an hour and I might give you a different answer. That's
a fair point. And I'm going to change your world because you can make the Blitz crepes up to 3 days in advance. FYI.
Really?
You can. They'll sit.
Is there a Blitz recipe on your website?
I believe so. It actually might be a vegan Blitz recipe, but I did write a really great Blitz recipe for my Jewish Learning, the Nosh this year that I can link in here or just send to you as well. You can
we'll throw it in the show notes. That'd be perfect.
Because you can make those crepes up to 3 days in advance and just separate them with wax paper, put them in a Ziploc and pop them in the fridge.
Oh,
homemade.
Mind-blowing. That could be a game changer.
I know. I just made an apple and honey crepe cake, and I did that. I made the crepes a couple days in advance in preparation for a Rosh Hashanah recipe I was writing. We obviously ate it well before Rosh Hashanah, but
obviously that can't last.
No, that doesn't last 3 days. That lasts only 3 days in the fridge. So Blitz casserole or Blitz souffle is an interesting one. That was one I wasn't expecting. And I'll take it. I mean, I'm severely lactose intolerant, so.
Oh, so am I.
Okay, you just.
There's a sheet of lactate next to me as I take a couple bites, pop another lactate in, yes.
At all times, is it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. The serving size is 3 pills, but I usually take at least 10, just to be safe.
We buy our between my daughter, my youngest, and I, we buy our lactate at Costco just so we have the mega size box at all time.
It's a dangerous life we live.
Isn't it?
It is. It's a terrifying life we live. I feel bad for everyone around us.
It's not great, I'll tell you.
No, but you know what? We move on. We persevere through it.
We do. It's what we do as Jews. So what is your favorite?
So I am a classic Jewish food lover, but maybe with a couple twists. So mine has to be the matzah ball. And I know you're thinking like, oh, that's so basic. Of course she loves the matzah ball, but the beauty of a matzah ball is that in a soup, delicious, fantastic. But my favorite first morning of Passover breakfast, don't cringe, is a cold matzah ball in a bowl. I eat it cold. It happens every single year. And sometimes if it's in the fridge, just sitting in a little bit of broth, I eat it as a snack with my hand. I don't care. I love them. You've never had a cold one. I can see it in your eyes.
No, I have. Wow. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. That's kind of brilliant.
It's so
actually the challenge. The thing that we always have is like the containers we have for leftover soup. There's only so much room for matzo balls. So like we'll have one container with soup and most of the matzo balls, and then there'll always be a container for the extra matzo balls. And those every once in a while, I'll just grab a spoon and
absolutely.
Take one.
I don't know if you have ever seen the movie The Wedding Singer.
It's been a long time.
Okay, well, there's a scene in there. It's a classic movie in my household where the granny who he teaches piano to gives him meatballs in his hand as he leaves as payment for her piano lesson. It's a very specific scene, but for some reason this has stuck with me. And that is how I eat matzah balls out of the fridge.
Just with your hand, not even a spoon, just hand, pop one out, pop it in.
It's like a little ball of goodness. It's like an energy ball, So yeah.
I get that. So here's my question with matzo balls. Is there, I feel like my matzo ball making is inconsistent.
Okay.
How do you do consistent matzo ball making?
So the trick so if you're looking for a fluffy matzo ball, now personally, I don't discriminate. A matzo ball is beautiful in all shapes and sizes.
I completely agree.
But the key to a great matzo ball is not overworking the batter or I guess it's called a batter, and giving it time to rest and just like relax. So you want to fluff it almost gently with a fork. You don't want to overdo it. You want to do a splash of seltzer water. Then you just want to give it some time in the fridge. And then when you're rolling it, don't roll it too tightly, just enough so that it will keep its shape. Pop it in your broth and then don't peek. If you peek, you're ruining the entire Passover experience or just Friday night experience. So you've really just got to trust the matzah ball to do what it needs to do. Too much interference is a bad thing.
That's advice that could go to so many things, I think.
I feel like that was a beautiful snippet. I feel like I just should make a book out of that. And I feel like perhaps a matzah ball episode would be well received because people have a lot of opinions about matzah balls. I personally put matzah balls in anything. In any Jewish deli I go to, I don't typically get the chicken soup. I'll get like any soup, or I'll even just get a salad and a side of a matzah ball. Just on a plate.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm an interesting person.
You are. I'm finding that out.
The look of regret on Lonny's face as he's like, oh my goodness, she's going to talk to the public.
There is no regret whatsoever. I'm learning new things. This is great. I am always happy to learn. This is the best part of being a journalist is I get to talk to people and learn new things with every conversation I have with someone. And sometimes things catch me more off guard than others. And, a side of matzo ball might be one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so these first episodes are going to launch around the high holidays. And so I wanted to know if there's any traditional dishes that you and your family have or had growing up around Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, absolutely. See, this was going to be the other. I'm glad I didn't use this food I'm going to talk about next because as my favorite food, it might actually be, but I'm glad since we're about to talk about the high holidays. So I have a recipe for a carrot. I always called it carrot cake. It's not like a traditional carrot cake. I think the actual recipe in my grandmother's unbelievably gorgeous handwriting, is a carrot mold. And it is equal parts carrot and shortening, like shredded carrots and shortening. So it's, we always say it's a healthy vegetable because it's got carrots. There's nothing healthy about it. It's like a cup of sugar, a cup of brown sugar, a couple cups of shredded carrots, and then like 2 sticks of shortening.
I think anything in a mold is typically unhealthy. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it's got to keep it shaped somehow. Exactly. But this is a recipe that, so the grandmother that I always associated it with was my dad's mom. She had actually got it from my mother's mom, who had gotten it from her son-in-law's mom. And I think it came to her from her mom or her grandmother. Like, it goes back, I mean, long story short, too late, I know. It goes back many, many generations. Probably, I would guess 150 years this recipe goes back. And I'm sure it's been refined over the years. But, you know, when my grandmother of blessed memory had moved out of her, you know, apartment, she had said, you can have my bundt pan and I'll give you the recipe. She had forgotten about the bundt pan, or the message didn't get to somebody. So she gave me $10 to go buy a bundt pan, but she gave me the handwritten recipe on a sheet of notebook paper, and we still have it. We also printed it out and have it like in a laminated sort of thing, because I don't want anything to happen to the original. But so we have a version that's a little more readable than her really nice cursive. And every year at Rosh Hashanah, that is the thing that has to be on our table. My cousin and I, every once in a while, would alternate making it. I think my version is better. Sorry, Mike, if you're listening, but mine is better. And so when our host sends the text out of, this is where we're doing dinner, who wants to bring what, within seconds, either my wife or I will claim the carrot cake for our household to make it. Mm-hmm. It has to be there.
That's amazing. That's a great one. I've never had one of those.
I'll share the recipe with you. I keep it pretty close to the family, but
I'm curious.
I'll send it to you. I'm sure you'll look at it and be like, oh, this is too unhealthy even for me I can't touch this. But it's one of those things that it's like, so much of food. I feel like, I think this is probably in any culture, but we're Jewish. So we look at it through that lens. It's not just the food, it's the memory that comes with the food of having it at a particular place in a particular time. Mm-hmm. And it's not Rosh Hashanah if that's not on my table. And I'm sure you have one like that too.
Yeah, we have a couple. I think that, I haven't had a high holiday with my family in over a decade because we've moved so much and we don't live close to anyone. So my husband and I have really used it as a way to form our own traditions, but there's still definitely a couple things that I always like to have there. But one of them is my Auntie Ethel's apple cake. And so she would make this fantastic apple cake. Her and I had a special bond. We shared the same birthday, obviously a couple generations apart. She was my grandfather's eldest sister. And so she would make this little apple cake. And the secret to it was topped with dollops of apricot jam. And so it made this nice little glaze with a little bit something extra in there. And it was just so good, so simple and classic. She wasn't a big cook or anything, but it was the one thing that she could really make, and so good that even my grandmother would make it, my grandma was very much she does it best. Her recipes are the best. She uses no one else's recipes, but this is one thing that she would make. So that's definitely one of them. And then the other would be my mom's, I don't even know whose recipe it started as, but a honey cake made with buckwheat honey. And finding buckwheat honey wasn't always simple. So it would be this big thing throughout the year. If one of us found a big container of buckwheat honey, it was we'd buy it all, stockpile this buckwheat honey. And she would make this really dark, fragrant honey cake out of it, which is funny because my dog's name is now Buckwheat.
So
because
of that?
Unrelated to the honey, but mostly because of cushion shells.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sure.
But still about the food. So those would be the two things that I would always need at my high holiday table. Now that it's typically just the two of us for the high holidays. And because of my work, I often make so many different things. So it doesn't always make sense to make all of these things all the time, because I might make something this week for Rosh Hashanah and just keep it in the freezer because I needed to make it for work. But
right, that's the beauty of what you do, though, is that you can have this stuff several, weeks in advance and done in the can, as
exactly.
we say, and.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, definitely that. And then for Yom Kippur, though, my mom would always make a broccoli and cheese souffle. That was basically broccoli, cottage cheese, and cheddar cheese and eggs baked into a casserole dish. And it was taste as good as it sounds. It was a hit.
That sounds incredible. It's so weird because I don't associate food like that with breakfast very often.
No,
is that something for breakfast or for before Kol Nidre?
Breakfast.
I don't I tend to put the words, break and fast together, and we have bagels and cream cheese and blitzes and, OJ and, bagels, lox and the whole bit. And so, yeah, we tend to go with a little more of certainly some savory, but mostly of the breakfast varietal for our meal. But that is very much like a sort of dinner side dish type of, which again, sounds amazing. I think it sounds like a phenomenal dish.
Yeah, I don't know how it came about, but I just remember that being the highlight. And that was, of course, before we all found out we were lactose intolerant. And it was what we all looked forward to. It was the one thing. It definitely doesn't make its way on the table quite as much now that we're all lactose challenged, but the memory lives on.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that is so much of what it is. It's about when you say a certain holiday, there's probably a certain food item that, outside of the norm. Obviously, Hanukkah time, latke, sufganiyot, sure, right? Those are sort of the obvious and, dare I say, cliche. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying, those are sort of I'm happy to talk about Hanukkah when it's closer to Hanukkah. We don't need to go there yet.
Of course, yeah.
But there is, it's the memory. It's all about whether it's good food, whether it's the best thing you've ever eaten or not, it evokes a memory of family and togetherness and all of the things that we love about the Jewish holidays.
Absolutely. And to take it away from the food bit, with Yom Kippur right around essentially the corner from when Rosh Hashanah is anyways, do you have any funny fasting stories? Things that happened, ways as a kid that you maybe broke your fast a little early? I feel like we all have stories of eating candies out of our grandmother's bags when nobody's looking at shul, or I was just the bad child.
I'm sure it wasn't just you. I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who did this. And in all honesty, I really didn't start fasting until I was in my, sort of early to mid 20s. Mm-hmm. Not that we didn't observe the holiday or go to synagogue, go to Kol Nidre. I love Kol Nidre. I don't go so much now, partially because we'll have dinner. We used to have dinner with a group of people, and then they would go to services, and we would go home and start prepping for the breakfast meal the next night. There's so much cooking we like to do for it for not that many people, but that shouldn't, too much food for too few people. But some of that's got to get done the night before, otherwise it can't all get done. So we've just never been great at planning several days in advance to have things put together. We've never quite made that work. So I don't really have many great fasting stories. I think the toughest challenge was the coughing fit I had once in synagogue when we lived in Michigan still. I brought my now wife, then we were still dating, and her best friend, but they're looking for somewhere to go for services. So we went to the Reform synagogue we went to, and I had this massive coughing fit and, found a cough drop somewhere. And I got looks from a couple of people for, putting food, putting something in my mouth and then looking for water in the middle of Kol Nidre, because I just something was stuck and would not get out of my throat. But like for the most, I mean, that was sort of the embarrassing one. But, for the most part, I'm pretty good. I think we told our kids from an early age, it's like you get to be, as soon as they could like reliably get meals for themselves, they're older now, but at the time it's like, good, you can get stuff out of the fridge yourself. Please don't ask me to make food for you. I can't eat. I don't want to be cooking like a lunch for you. Just pull a yogurt out of the fridge. You're fine.
Yeah. Resilience. Teaching resilience. Absolutely.
Teach them young.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
And you? Were you anything beyond stealing candies?
Stealing those like Werther's caramels out of the Tell Eat bags. When my husband and I first started dating, our first Yom Kippur together, when we left shul, we were walking home and we had already like gotten everything ready for breakfast that evening. And then we were sitting there and I was like, man, I feel like ice cream. And so we went to instead of breaking fast with like our eggs and bagels, which was what we had planned, we got soft serve and a cinnamon bun. And the amount of sugar we consumed after not eating for all that time, we both just were like in pain. We both passed out maybe an hour later. We woke up the next day being like, where are we? And we didn't know what was going on. We felt so ill because we broke our fast with soft serve and like a drippy, gooey cinnamon bun. I feel
like one of those probably would have been okay. I think the two of them might have been where you went wrong.
I think we maybe overdid it a little.
Maybe.
A little bit. Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the last times I craved soft serve ice cream because I have such terrible memories of passing out that evening from this sugar high and rush. And then the next day, just like seeing the bagels that we'd picked up for breakfast on the counter and being like, man, that really could have done the job a lot better.
See, that's the thing. It's like bagel, right? Even the cinnamon roll probably, it's breakfasty food. I mean, it's an anytime food really, but like you can associate it with like a breakfast type setting. It sort of fits with bagels, but yeah, I'm not sure I could look at soft serve the same way if that like, and I also don't know if I had soft serve good enough that it could usurp.
Yeah.
A good breakfast meal.
It wasn't even that good. I was just so hungry.
So that's the worst part.
So that was my poor memory of a fast, but that was many years ago. So I've learned my lesson since. I've understood that I have to have something with some protein, some fat, a little light afterwards, just replenish the stores that I've lost from sitting in shul all day. And I've learned my lesson.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's good that you don't keep repeating the same mistake. I'm sure there are other mistakes maybe you keep repeating, but
Absolutely.
At least that's not that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Many more than I could keep repeating, but this one once a year, I've learned.
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as we're going to start digging in on this podcast more, what do you think the podcast is going to start looking like in the future as you continue to grow into it?
That's a great question. And I've thought a lot about this. I'm super excited to get started on Not Your Bubbe's Nosh. And I want it to be about all things Jewish food, both new and old. I don't want it to just be a conversation about brisket and potatoes, but I want it to be a conversation about navigating Jewish food as a vegetarian, if you're gluten-free, asking the questions, is vegan pork kosher? I don't know. Discussing food trends through a Jewish lens and really having a conversation about why we eat the things that we do, what makes them special, talking about holiday menu planning, and also just like figuring out who invented gefilte fish. Like I just want anything you've ever wondered about Jewish food. I hope that we can address it and really just have a conversation about how to embrace Jewish food, even the foods you didn't know you would love, or talk about foods that you really dislike, like chopped liver. Who's still doing the chopped liver? I want to have that conversation as well. So I really want to mix old and new foods together and get it to a place where your Bubbe wants to listen, you want to listen, your grandkids want to listen. Everyone wants to listen to see how they can connect through Jewish food with where they are in life right now.
I believe both my mother and my stepmother are doing the chopped liver. And that's not for me. That is not my bag. And it is look, it is for a lot of people, many of whom I'm related to, but not my thing.
Yeah, I once my grandmother gave me chopped liver telling me it was lentils. And then she told me after it was liver. And I've never forgiven her.
That's rude.
She was the sassiest woman you've ever met. And may her memory be a blessing. She's the biggest inspiration to me. That's how I got into cooking. And that's where my passion for Jewish food comes from. But man, she was a sassy lady. And some of the things that would come out of that woman's mouth were not PG-13. I'll tell you that much, especially when it came to talking about our significant others. As she got older, her filter definitely left her body. There was no more filter. And the amount of times she told me that what she wanted to do to my husband, if I was ever done with him, it's for adult audiences only. So she was a sassy lady that played a lot of little pranks on us to get us to eat the foods that she was making. And, but she cooked with love and was the most classic Jewish grandmother you could ever imagine. But yeah, sass coming out of her ears.
Probably right up to and including the lack of filter, because I think that's not that's not necessarily unique to your grandmother as they get older.
Definitely not. No, not at all. So yeah, that's where I hope the podcast goes. And of course, this is such a big opportunity to connect with people. And I hope that if anyone ever has a question, wants to pick my brain about their holiday menu, have their questions answered, I'm always around and I can be reached through Instagram, through email, and really just have people talking about something that makes being Jewish so fun, which is the food, and just sharing my love for all things Jewish food, with the exception of chopped liver.
Well, yeah, no, I'm with you there. That's fair. That's totally fair. So yeah, people can find you at noshwithmicah.com and Nosh with Micah on social as well. Are you just on Instagram?
I dabble in TikTok, but I'm the first to admit it's something I'm not super into. So one day perhaps I'll get there. So Instagram and my website are the best places to find me. That's where I'm most consistent. And I'm pretty much always reachable by there. And now through here, I'm sure that I can add my email to the bottom of this as well, or how to contact me, so that if anyone ever has any food questions about Jewish food, or just what do I make for Hanukkah? What do I make for Rosh Hashanah for a picky eater? I hope to just be a really good resource for people with questions.
Well, and we are absolutely looking forward to that. Glad you're there for this resource, to be this resource. And we're just so excited to get this going again. The three of us, when we did it, was a lot of fun and we really enjoyed it. And I think we took it to the point it could get to when we started this back in 2019. And I think the idea of having somebody, we're passionate about food. We like food, but you take it to a whole different level. It is your profession. It is your career. And we're so happy that you're willing to sort of take this podcast and move it to the next level. Because, one of the things that we had talked about was the fact that there just isn't that much well done Jewish food, sort of new media Jewish food content out there. And so we're really excited at the prospect of where this could go.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe I'll be in Minnesota teaching a Jewish cooking class one of these days. We can have a little live podcast out there.
Oh, yes. Live, not your Bubbe's Nosh. I think that would be amazing.
Stranger things have happened. I just booked a flight to do 2 Hanukkah cooking classes in Kauai in December. I was asked to teach a couple cooking classes there. So, I will say Kauai versus Minnesota is a little different in terms of excitement, but listen,
Minnesota in the summer is a great place, but if you're going to tell me, Minnesota or Kauai over in December, I'd say I'm going to have a tough time selling that one.
Yeah, perhaps we can do a Rosh Hashanah themed cooking class next summer or something like that. Yeah.
Next summer, midsummer, late summer, we'll try to figure out some way to make that work.
Absolutely.
Well, Micah, I guess this is your show to sign off on, so I will turn it over to you for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Lonny. It was such a pleasure. I'm so excited to get this started, and I'm sure this won't be our last time talking on Not Your Bubbe's Nosh, and looking forward to sharing my love for Jewish food with you and everyone who's listening. Not Your Bubbe's Nosh is a part of the Jewfolk podcast network and is produced by Jewfolk Inc. For more shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast. If you've got questions, email me at micah@noshwithmicah.com.